Let's begin this Bible study by looking at a passage from Revelation chapter 17. Let's look at Revelation chapter 17 and read verse 8. Revelation chapter 17 and verse 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. So this is a passage that is talking about, obviously, the Antichrist, the beast, as he's called. And it says that he was at one point, that means he was alive. He is not. That means when John was writing these words in the book of Revelation, he was not alive, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So at some point, either at the beginning of the tribulation or in the middle of the tribulation, he's going to ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Now look at the word perdition there. It is a word which in Greek is Apollyon or Apollo, the god Apollo, right? He's also called Apollyon in Greek mythology, but the Greek word for perdition is Apollyon, because Apollo is the god of death and destruction. And the word for perdition, which is destruction, in Greek is the word Apollyon. So the reason why I'm talking about it is because of what I'm going to teach today in the subject that we have been considering for a few weeks now: America, Trump, and the last days. Now, I know that I've been going, here and there on this subject. Looks like, I've not been going in a systematic way, and that's because of the sheer amount of material there is for me to sort through and teach. Okay, so that's the reason why there seems to be a little bit of confusion about going in order in a systematic way. But otherwise, I am talking about the role that America is going to play in the last days, and a few things about Trump, the president-elect of America, that really stand out. And the Lord willing, in the next Bible study, I will talk about that. I'm going to talk about some very surprising things about Donald Trump. Again, at the beginning itself, let me tell you that I do not believe that Donald Trump is the Antichrist, and I have solid evidence for it. Anyone who dances like this cannot be the Antichrist. Well, no, but it doesn't look to me like he fits the bill. It doesn't look like he is the man who is described in the Bible as the beast, the Antichrist. Well, many world leaders have those qualities of the Antichrist in them, for sure. And Trump, for one, does have many of them, as I have outlined in some of my Bible studies. Right? He is a great picture of the Antichrist. Though the Jews look at him like a picture of King Cyrus, who was responsible for building the temple, in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. He is more of a type of the Antichrist, and the Antichrist also, as many of you might know, would be instrumental in the rebuilding of the third temple, or the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. So in all probability, it could be Trump. So I'm not saying he is the Antichrist, but he certainly displays some characteristics of the Antichrist. I know many of you have written to me saying he is the Antichrist. I'm not convinced about that. All right, so also I've done a research on this man, trying to find out if he is a Freemason. And I could not find any evidence whatsoever to Donald Trump being a Freemason. So that's a good thing if he is not. Or if it is well hidden, I do not know. But as far as I could say, I couldn't find any evidence to that. Some people spoke about his his connection to the very satanic order of the Golden Dawn. Even there, I could not find any connection whatsoever to Donald Trump, except for the fact that the order of the Golden Trump was started, not the Golden Trump, the Golden Dawn, started in England and then later on shifted to America and had one of its branches in New York in the 19th century. Well, that's all I could find, but other than that, I could not find any more evidence to Donald Trump being connected to Freemasonry or any other satanic cult. But I cannot say the same thing about the men who surround him. And it's very interesting. You can dig up a lot of stuff yourself. I have information on at least 10 people whom he has chosen in his cabinet or in his team, whatever you call it. And all 10 of them are connected to the Roman Catholic Church, and some of them even to secret societies. As I said, I will talk about the Lord willing in the next Bible study, because today I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about, as you know, I started talking about last week, America's connection to the New World Order that's coming up. Right? You heard many American presidents talk about the New World Order. It was Ronald Reagan's dream to see the New World Order established. Right? He was one of the architects behind this whole plan. Well, it goes way beyond and much further before Ronald Reagan, but he was one of those men who strongly believed that what the world needs is a new world order. And then after him, of course, his successor, George Bush. I don't know if he was his immediate successor. He was certainly his vice president, but whenever it was George H.W. Bush, he was very vocal about the new world order. Then you have, of course, Bill Clinton, who spoke about it. You have George W. Bush, who was much more occultic than his father. And then, of course, you have Barack Obama, who was a total occultist, probably a Satanist, and he spoke about the New World Order. So these things talk about how the leaders of America are very, very, active in this whole plan of the secret societies to make America the new Atlantis, as I've spoken about last time, right? The new Atlantis of Francis Bacon. And even, like I've said, this plan for the New World Order goes way beyond Ronald Reagan. It goes right up to the founding fathers. Not all of them, but many of them. I know that most Christians think in America that their founding fathers were very godly, Bible-believing men. Maybe some of them were. What I found is this. The others were not born-again Christians in all probability. How do we know? Because of what they wrote about their belief in the Bible and the Lord Jesus Christ. They ridiculed Jesus Christ. They ridiculed the Bible. Many of them. Right? You have their letters written by their own hands still there for you to read. You can do your own research on that. I can't, present everything here in this Bible study, but you can do so yourself. These people who didn't believe in Jesus Christ, these people who didn't believe the Bible among the founding fathers, they didn't have the freedom to openly discuss their beliefs or openly put their plans into action. They knew that there would be a rebellion, a revolution, because the people were Christians, you see. The people were Christians. But this is how the devil works. Just like Judas Iscariot became a part of the closest circle of the Lord Jesus Christ, the apostles. The devil brings in his people from secret societies to become part of the highest levels of government. And they have been doing it since the 1700s, since the 1770s when America became a nation. They've been at it since then. So you can imagine to what level they would have reached today. And there is evidence right before your eyes for all this, as I'm going to show you today. Now, the reason why I read this verse from Revelation 17 and verse 8 is because it talks about the beast who goes into perdition. right? And in Second Thessalonians chapter 2, as I'm sure you know, Second Thessalonians chapter 2, it says in verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Again, the son of perdition. You see the word perdition, it's again Apollos, or Apollyon, to be exact. The founding fathers, many of them, and many presidents later of the United States were obsessed with Apollo, the son of Jupiter, right? Because they believed that in this new world order that they have been called to establish, the resurrected Apollo or the resurrected Osiris or Horus, whatever name you call him by, is going to come back and be the head of this new world order, and he's going to bring peace and whatever to this whole world. They all strongly believe that, especially Franklin D. Roosevelt and his vice president Wallace, his first name, I think Henry Wallace or something like that. I'll look it up. But both of them were occultic. They followed Madame Blavatsky's theosophical secret doctrines, and they were instrumental in putting the Great Seal of the United States on the dollar bill. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about some of these things. You know, it's a lot to digest for some, especially because you've been under the impression that America, especially its founding fathers and some of its presidents, were godly men. That's the level of deception that the devil is involved in. And America is going to be an instrument in bringing in the New World Order and the Antichrist. Now, I don't have any evidence in the Bible to say that the Antichrist is going to come from America. Many people write to me and say, America is Mystery Babylon of Revelation chapter 17. It fits the bill in many ways, but there are some things where it doesn't fit the bill. So I cannot say I cannot conclude that America is Mystery Babylon. It's not. Mystery Babylon is something else, as we have always been teaching. It's the Roman Catholic Church. Because it existed always, you see. It's not just an organization or a being or whatever it is, an entity that came into existence in the 1700s. No. It's been there right from the beginning. So I don't believe America is Mystery Babylon, and I don't have any evidence from the Bible to say that the Antichrist will come from America. I don't have any. All I know that he's going to be a Jew, at least in the first part of the tribulation, when he comes as, like some Bible teachers say, the man of sin. He is a Jew. Then he comes as the son of perdition in the second part, like some Bible teachers say. Again, that's all I know, but I cannot say that he's going to come from America. But one thing is for sure. America is a superpower in these last days that we are living in. And it's been designed by occultic Satan worshippers to be the new Atlantis, which will be instrumental in bringing in the new world order in the whole world, and then secondly, in bringing in the man of sin onto the stage. So that I believe. And that's because of the evidence that's found within America itself. So let's begin by talking about the Great Seal and the dollar bill. The Great Seal of America, the Great Seal of the United States of America. Now, the Lord willing, again, I did speak a little bit about the Jesuit plan for Washington, D.C., but I left it there. That's the reason why I said I'm going here and there in this subject. I started talking about it, then didn't go into the details. I left it there. But the Lord willing, again, in the future, I want to talk about the Jesuit order's plan for Washington, D.C. We want to talk about its architecture especially, and how it's a mirror city of the Vatican City. What business does America, a country that had claimed to be Christian, have anything to copy the design of the Vatican in its architecture? We'll talk about those things, the Lord willing. So there is this symbolism in Washington, D.C., and that symbolism, points us to the secret destiny of America. That means what these occultists secretly planned to be the destiny of the United States of America. It includes a future national and global subservience to the God of Freemasonry. They want to bring the whole world, first America, then the whole world, to the feet of the God of Freemasonry, who is none other than Nimrod, as we're going to look at later. And when Americans make their pledge of allegiance to God, right, when they say one nation under God, or as it's written on the dollar bill, in God we trust, and things like that, they have no clue as to the God that was intended by the people who put those words there, right? So when you take allegiance, you're thinking about the God of the Bible if you're a born-again Christian, and that's all right, right? That's the right thing to do. But they had a different design altogether. Which God were they talking about? We'll talk about that. Now, the idea that the United States was established as a monotheistic, Protestant, Bible-believing Christian nation by those who designed Washington, D.C., by those who signed all those documents and all that, to believe that is to be deceived. And the God that is referred to on American, on American currency, if you think it's the God of the Bible, again, that's to be deceived. That's being deceived. Because if you look at Washington, D.C., if you look at the symbolism on the dollar bills, you don't find any connection to the Bible. You don't find any connection to Jesus Christ or to the God of the Bible. You don't. What you see is, and also when you look at, as I've said, the beliefs of some of these founding fathers, what the founding fathers believed in, what they put on the Great Seal of America, and how they designed Washington, D.C. When you look at these things, there's no way you could think they meant the God of the Bible. It's impossible to come to that conclusion, but yet many Christians believe that. Well, God, I believe, overruled their deception, right? They thought, oh, it's going to be allegiance to the God of Freemasonry, but God said, no, the people of this nation will pledge their allegiance to me, and they did that from the beginning. It's the people, you see. It's the people of America who made that nation great by putting their faith in the Bible. But sadly, there came a time when the devil infiltrated the ranks of Bible-believing Christians. And in the 1900s, in 1904, they came out with the American Standard Version, having rejected God's book, the King James Bible. And the decline of America started then. Yes, it still remained a superpower for 100 years, but that's only because of those few Bible-believing Christians still living there and pledging their allegiance to the God of the Bible and to the Bible itself. So the founding fathers believed in this. They call their God, many of them, not everybody, the God of Freemasonry, who is known as the supreme architect. Supreme architect. That's what they believed in. Some of them were deists in their beliefs. Some of them were Freemasons. They also believed in the supreme judge of the world. The supreme judge of the world. That's the God they meant when they wrote the name of God in their documents or wherever they wrote it down. And all the pagan icons that they have used in all these seals and other things, right, in the statues, the buildings in Washington, D.C., the architecture, the layout, everything is connected to Freemasonry. Any Freemason, may not be a Freemason on the lower levels, but any high-level Freemason knows very clearly when he looks at Washington, D.C., when he picks up a dollar bill, he knows what these things mean. And when he looks at the word God on the dollar bill where it says, "In God we trust," he knows which God is being spoken of, because the people who put those words there had a different God in mind, not the God of the Bible. That's what I've been trying to say. So the Great Seal of the United States is called the signature of that exalted body of Masons, as Manly P. Hall calls it. Manly P. Hall was a Freemason, an occultist. He wrote extensively about Freemasonry. He was a high-level Freemason. And he calls it the signature of that most exalted body of Masons who designed America for a peculiar and particular purpose, he says. He says it bears rich symbolism forecasting anything but Christianity. These are the words of a person who understands the architecture, he understands the symbols, the icons, everything. He knows it's all to do with Freemasonry and nothing to do with the Bible or Christianity, sadly. Now, when Christians in the 1800s argued that a hypothetical annihilation of the US would lead to the succeeding centuries becoming heathen, right, in America, when they said that, they had no clue that they were already a part of that. They thought in the 1800s, well, at some point America is going to go down and then it's going to become heathen. They didn't know that that was the whole purpose right from the beginning. That was the whole purpose, that America has been a heathen nation based on the symbolism of the Great Seal. Again, I'm not saying the people, but the whole plan, the purpose has been to make it a heathen nation. And sadly today, it's almost there. I know that some of you living there would say it's been a heathen nation for a long time. That's very sad, but that's the truth. And that's been the design, the purpose for it from the beginning. And what they did was they made it look like it's Christian. Because like I've said, they cannot come out openly. They were a minority, a few elite, a few intellectuals, a few Satanists and occultists. That's all they were. But the majority of the people were Bible-believing Christians. So that's why they couldn't come out openly. That's why they did it also secretly with these symbols. And they made it look like these symbols, are talking about God of the Bible and talking about Christianity. No, they always had two meanings to these things. One for the uninitiated, the common people. They made them believe that this is all Christian. In God we trust. How godly that sounds. Not on this dollar bill, in God we trust. That sounds very godly. And the common man is taken by it. But the initiated know what it means and which God is being mentioned there. Now, as I've said, United States President and Freemason Theodore Roosevelt, not Franklin, but the one before, he strongly opposed the idea, right? He was there much before. He strongly opposed the idea that they should make all these symbols to look like they are Christian. He wanted to come out openly. He didn't want to hide things and make it look like these things are Christian. He wanted to say, no, it's not Christian. It's all what it is actually, pagan in nature. He was opposed to this whole idea. But the other Masons, they were not opposed to it. They said, no, this is all right. We cannot go against the people. But we'll make them believe that these things are all Christian when they are not. So that's what had happened. Again, the word God is so ambivalent. There's which God? The Bible says there are gods many. Which God are you talking about? When you interpret the word God in the context of the Great Seal, you can never conclude that this is talking about the God of the Bible. It's impossible. If you're a sane person, it's impossible, right? So the Great Seal symbolism will not allow you to think that the God mentioned on the dollar bill is the God of the Bible. When you say, in God we trust, it was accommodated by the Freemasons. They just allowed it to be there so that nobody would understand it, except for the Masons and the other Illuminates. Only they would understand the official US motto. Now, if you are someone from another country, like where I come from, and if you look at the dollar bill for the very first time in your life, you can, and if you know nothing about America, let's say, you come from some jungle here, you've never heard of America, and then you look at the dollar bill, you will never come to the conclusion that this is talking about the Christian God. Even if you know Christianity and the Bible very well, you would never come to that conclusion. So that tells you something, right? They have purposely deceived people into believing that these things are talking about the God of the Bible when they are not talking about the God of the Bible. In God we trust. What God? Which God? So with no preconceptions, you allow the symbolism on the, if you allow the symbolism on the seal to speak for itself, you would quickly come to a conclusion that this is a reference to some God worshipped in Egypt. Right? If you look at the dollar bill, not the God of the Bible, you would think it's to do with Greek and Egyptian gods. You would think of the sun god. When you look at the pyramid especially, and the unfinished pyramid that's there on the dollar bill, which we'll talk about. This is a deception. It's a deception. They have put it there and they made people think that these things are talking about the God of the Bible. It's impossible. If you look at the specific beliefs of the people who influenced the making of the Great Seal, you discover that their highest masters, the people whom they served, including Albert Pike, right? Albert Pike, you can go and look him up. He's there all over Freemasonry. You would see that their masters worship the sun god. They worship the sun god. That's why we read that verse about perdition and Apollo. He's connected to the sun. If you read the story of Troy, you would see how Apollo played a major role. He was a great supporter of Hector of Troy. And he's the sun god. He's called the sun god in that. And he's the Antichrist, by the way, according to the Bible. So they worshipped the sun. They were sun worshippers. The people who were instrumental in making the Great Seal followed people like Albert Pike and others who were sun worshippers. The sun god, who is known by various names, as I've said, Apollo, Osiris, sometimes he's even directly called Nimrod. That's who it is. Apollo, Osiris, all of them are different names for Nimrod. Another thing, when you look at, I wanted to bring a dollar bill which I had saved. It's been there with me for more than 10 or 15 years, but I forgot to do so. But I'm sure those who are watching from other countries have access to pictures of the dollar bill, and you can look it up. And if you're watching from America, you can pull one out from your pocket and look at it. So if you look at the dollar bill, you would see that there is actually in plain sight a prophecy. It's really the Great Seal that you find printed on the dollar bill is really a prophecy that not just Americans, but people of every ancient religion believed from the beginning, from the time of Nimrod, after he died at least. They have believed in this prophecy, and that prophecy has been put in plain sight, but very few understand it. What is that prophecy? It's a hidden divination. It's a prophesied coming of a God to the earth in a physical body. That's what it's talking about, as I'm going to explain later on. And they believe that these symbols talk about their God who has died, right? We have read already in Revelation 17 verse 8, he was He is not, and he will ascend out of the bottomless pit. He's known as Apollo, Osiris, Nimrod. If you look at the stories about these men, that's what they believed in ancient culture, that this great God who died is going to come back to life. And when he comes back to life, he's going to establish a new world order. That's the prophecy that is there in all ancient religions, like in the Roman, Greek, Egyptian, right? All these ancient religions, even in India, they have that faith that their God is coming back. And that's printed on the dollar bill. That prophecy is printed on the dollar bill, and they're saying our God is coming back, and when he comes back, he's going to establish the new world order. The new world order, that's printed on your dollar bill. Now, many of the founding fathers of the United States government were Freemasons. As I've said, not all of them, but many of them. And they received aid from a secret society in Europe. And that helped them to establish America as a peculiar country. And they made use of all that support they got from Europe, because Europe in those days was full of secret societies run by these people, the Jesuits. And they sponsored these people, these other Freemasons in America. To do what? To plan this whole thing out for America, to make America the new Atlantis. The new Atlantis, right? The Atlantis that Plato spoke about, that is there, that you will find if you go through the Pillars of Hercules, as we have seen in the previous Bible study. And they did go through the Pillars of Hercules in New York in 2001 on 9/11. So that's already been done. So they are moving fast towards establishing the new Atlantis, and it started with the founding fathers. And what they did was they created this symbolism, which is esoteric, mysterious, and nobody would be able to decipher it unless they understood how Freemasonry works and what Freemasonry believes in. So very few would find it, because most would not be interested. So Manly P. Hall, Albert Pike, all these people wrote about it. Manly P. Hall was a 33rd degree Freemason. And if you look at some of the things that the Freemasons use in their lodges, right, in their clothes, in their pictures, you would find a striking resemblance between the Great Seal and the things that they use in Freemasonry. Why? As if there are not other things that you could use. The founding fathers used symbolism which is found in Freemasonry. Exactly the same. Manly P. Hall says this: the Great Seal is the signature of this exalted body, unseen and for the most part unknown, and the unfinished pyramid upon its reverse side is a trestle board, setting forth symbolically the task to the accomplishment of which the United States government was dedicated from the day of its inception. These are the words of Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason. He says this. He says that Great Seal is the signature of this body of Freemasons who created it. And he says it talks about the task which they have to accomplish, and which is to which they have been dedicated from the beginning. That is, the government has been dedicated from the beginning. What is it? To make America the new Atlantis. That's why, like I've said, they chose originally the phoenix bird instead of the eagle. You can actually find those pictures that they originally proposed to be a part of this Great Seal instead of the great bald eagle of America. And this phoenix, if you look at it, it's sitting in its nest of flames because they believe in occult circles. The phoenix bird burns down to ashes and rises up out of its ashes. So that's what they want before the new Atlantis comes into existence. It burns down, and out of its ashes will come the new world order, the new Atlantis. So you can think, if the US government has been dedicated from the beginning, from its inception, secretly, but it's been there, to steer the course of America in such a way that it becomes instrumental in bringing the man of sin into the world, what can a man like Trump do? If he's a sincere, honest man, and if he's really trying to make America great again, what can he do against such people? Well, you could always argue and say, well, God's going to help him to do it. That's possible. I've always been saying it. I don't know the mind of God really, even though I search the scriptures about this particular subject. I have no clue whether God wants Trump to really make America great again, or Trump is just he's going to be another pawn in their hands. I do not know. But if he's really sincere and if he tries to do something, these people are not going to keep quiet. Like I've said, look at the men he's surrounded by, the men and women he's surrounded by. So Manly P. Hall says that this meant practically, he believed what this meant practically was that only students of esoteric symbolism would be able to decipher the true meaning hidden within the seal, the Great Seal of America. And that symbolism, he says, was intended to convey two sets of meanings. The first for non-illuminates, for the non-initiates, for the normal people, having to do with certain natural or historical issues perceived to be important to society. So they made it look like these are connected to things that you look up to, things that you respect and honor. That's what they made them believe. And the second, deeper occult truisms meant for comprehension by members of the exalted order. When he talks about the exalted order, he's talking about the Freemasons. So let's talk about the great dollar bill. Let's talk about firstly the obverse side, right? The front side. The obverse side of the Great Seal portrays a bald eagle, right? As I've said, the bald eagle was chosen later on because of what they said. They said if we put the phoenix in, it'll look very obvious. It's an occult bird. We cannot openly put our beliefs out that we believe in such kind of things. So they said, okay, let's not put the phoenix. Let's put the bald eagle. So what do they do with the bald eagle, right? Let's begin with that. The eagle. Right, again, I wish I had remembered to bring a picture of that for those who do not know what I'm talking about, because probably Americans know this, but brothers and sisters watching from other places may not have seen it. But as I've said, you can look it up on the internet and you will find a picture of the Great Seal of America. There you have the eagle. What's it doing? It's clutching a bundle of arrows in one hand, okay? So what do you call it? Hand or talon, right? In one talon, it's holding arrows. And in the other, it's holding an olive branch. Well, very nice, right? The olive branch stands for peace. And if you look at the symbol, right, in its left hand, it has the arrows. In its right hand, it has, or the right talon, it has the olive branch. And its head is turned towards the olive branch. That means America wants peace. But if necessary, if it's pushed upon us, we will use weapons, force, or we will not hesitate to go to war, is what it means. Right? So these are the two things. This is for the normal people, for the uninitiated. This is what it means. Arrows stand for war, olive branch stands for peace, and the bird is looking towards peace. That's what it means. But the thing is this, if you count there, the arrows are 13 in number, and the olive branch has 13 leaves. Not only 13 leaves, but also 13 olives. Did you ever count it? 13 arrows. For the uninitiated, they would say this number 13 stands for the 13 original states or colonies, whatever you call it, that form the United States of America. That's why 13. I would say, why did you divide it into 13? Was it really natural? Was it just a coincidence that it turned out to be 13 colonies that formed the original United States of America? Or was it on purpose? Right, today, I don't know how many are there, 50 states or less or more, I do not know. But why not change it? No, it's 13. The original 13 colonies are said to be represented in the 13 leaves of the olive branch, 13 olives on the branch, as I've said. And also, there is the shield on the breast of the bird, right? I forgot that. 13 stripes in red and white. You count it. I counted it. 13 stripes in red and white. Exactly 13. Not one more, not one less. 13 bars and stripes, they call it, right? The bars and stripes. 13 arrows and all that. Then there is this phrase written there. I don't know if this is in Latin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Forgive me if it's wrong, but I'm sure you understand. E pluribus unum. That's what is written there. E pluribus, according to my pronunciation at least. I need to get the spelling right because that also matters. U-N-U-M. E pluribus unum. What does that mean? It means one out of many. Right? Something like that. That's the meaning. We are all one, though we are many. That's the kind of meaning that comes. But you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 letters. I'm going to talk about this a little later, right? And the other Latin inscriptions on the Great Seal. I'll talk about those things. But before that, so another thing about a bird, there are 13 stars. There are stars above the bird's head. How many? 13 stars. Look at this. 13 arrows, 13 leaves, 13 olives, 13 letters in E pluribus unum, 13 stars. I don't think this is a coincidence. And by the way, if you look at the way the stars are arranged, at one look you can make out it's the shape of a hexagram. I don't know exactly how it's arranged. I don't remember. I think it's 1 star, then 4 stars, then 3, then 4 and 1, something like that. You know, you look it up. It's clearly the shape of a hexagram. E pluribus unum, 13 letters, 13 stars above the eagle's head. Everything to do with 13. What does the Bible say about the number 13? You know, when I talk about numbers and their significance in the Bible, many Christians are coming to me nowadays asking me about the numbers. Some understand it, some get confused. I want to tell you this before I move forward. Numbers have significance. Most Christians are familiar with numerology. So they think we are talking about numerology. No, we are not talking about that numerology. When they put these things, they had their numerology. But there is a Bible meaning to numbers. A Bible meaning to numbers. Right? The one that everybody is familiar with, number 7. Number 7, God uses it for himself, right? It's the number of perfection or completion. So you have the number, you take right from number 1, you go all the way. There are meanings to the numbers. We have seen earlier in the previous Bible study, the number 11. In the Bible, it's connected to the Antichrist. How these people who did this very horrible crime, right, on 9/11, how the number 11 is connected to this whole Twin Towers thing, which themselves look like the number 11. We have done that. There is meaning to numbers. In the Bible, for example, 5 is the number of death. 6 is the number of man, the Bible says in Revelation 13. So God has given significance to numbers. 8 is the number of new beginnings. 7,000 years of the earth, the new heaven and new earth will be the 8th millennium. So 9 is the number of fruitfulness, like you have the 9 fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. 10 is the number of Gentiles throughout the Bible. You will see it. Now, I'm talking about the significance of numbers in the King James Bible, not in the NIV or ASV or other Bibles. In the King James Bible, numbers have significance. We have seen already 11 is connected to the Antichrist. 12 is connected to Israel. Right? 12 apostles and 12 tribes of Israel. It's connected to Israel. What about the number 13? Well, I'll talk about the number 13 in 1 second, but I'll say this before I forget. Now, on the reverse side of the seal, the number 13 continues. And I'll talk about that, right? So, just so I don't forget, 13 layers in the pyramid. 13 layers in the pyramid, that the unfinished pyramid that you see there. All right, so the number 13 in Freemasonry is called a power number. It's a number for power. And they say it is sacred to the moon, and it is representative of the head of Isis, the wife of Osiris. So they say 13 is the number that represents the head of Isis. That's what they believe in occult circles about the number 13, right? Many people believe that the number 13 is an unlucky number. It's got a negative connotation to it, even among the unsaved people. But in occult circles, they believe it's connected to the wife of Osiris, which is Isis. Now, what does the Bible say about the number 13? There are so many examples. Every time I go through my Bible reading, I make note of any significant truth there is to learn about the number 13, and there is so much. And I believe that the chapters and verse divisions of the King James Bible have been put there by God, and they have significance. And you look at the number 13, chapter 13s in the Bible, verse 13s in the Bible, you'll learn a lot about the number 13. But let me begin here. In the Bible, the first man to be connected to the number 13, can you guess? That's right. Nimrod is the first man connected to the number 13. How is it? He is the 13th from Adam. 13th man from Adam. So, in what way is it significant? The word Nimrod had many meanings, 3 meanings at least. One means, it comes from the word Nimr, which means a leopard. Nimr Rad means the subduer of the leopard. And in Revelation 13, the beast, the Antichrist, is called a leopard. Thirdly, the meaning of Nimrod, the third meaning of the name Nimrod is a rebel. And he's the 13th from Adam. You think that's a coincidence? The 13th man from Adam is known as a rebel, and he was a rebel. He's called a mighty hunter before the Lord. Just like it says in, let me read this verse, Genesis chapter 13, and that's the first number 13, right? And verse 13, let's look at that. Genesis 13, verse 13, but the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Nimrod was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That means against the Lord. So he was a rebel against God. The Bible doesn't have much to say about his history, though the Bible does talk about him in the prophetical books of the Old Testament. He's called the Assyrian. He's also called by his name Nimrod. He's mentioned once or twice. But nothing much to say about his history, just that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. He hunted leopards, he hunted other animals. He was an expert at training leopards to help him in the chase. Remember, after the flood, the population was very small on the earth, and the wild beasts generally multiplied faster than human beings. So they were having trouble with these wild animals. And this mighty hunter rose up and he started hunting them down, killing them with the help of leopards. He raised them, reared them to help him in the hunt, like many kings did in later times. And of course, they also started training dogs to do that, but originally they trained leopards. It comes from Nimrod, the leopard, the subduer of the leopard. That's one of the meanings of his name. And the third meaning is a rebel. And this man, he rebelled against God. If you read in history, you will understand. He was the man who led the rebellion of the Tower of Babel. It's there in history, everywhere to read. Nimrod was the one who led the rebellion of the Tower of Babel. And his name is Rebel. And he is the 13th from Adam. He is the 13th from Adam. Look at Genesis chapter 14 and verse 4. Genesis chapter 14 and verse 4. If you still have any doubt about the number 13. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. You see the number 13 connected to rebellion? In the 13th year they rebelled. The number 13 is connected to rebellion in the Bible. And the Great Seal of the United States of America has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 13s on it. 6 different 13s are there on it. And then we have already seen Genesis 13:13. The men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceeding. They rebelled against God's natural law, which is men marrying women. They rebelled against it, and you find it in Genesis 13 verse 13 in your King James Bible. In Esther chapter 3 verse 13, you see again, I won't read it, but there is this whole negative connotation of the number 13. It was on the 13th day of the month that Haman decided to kill all the Jews. It's got a very negative connotation in the Bible. Now, Manly Hall wrote these words: while the eagle was a shrewd masquerade for the mythical phoenix, so important to Masonic mysticism. And he goes on to talk about, so look at this. He's saying that this eagle is a shrewd masquerade for the mythical phoenix. That means they just substituted it. In their minds, this eagle is really the phoenix, which is going to burn and come back to life. Most of the designs originally submitted had the phoenix bird on its nest of flames as the central motif, he says. And then he continues, he continues, its selection would of course have been appropriate because the phoenix is one sign of the secret orders of the ancient world and of the initiate of those orders, for it was common to refer to one who had been accepted into the temples as a man twice born or reborn. You see, the phoenix dies and it is born again. The twice born, as they are called, once they receive wisdom in these secret societies, they are considered as having died and have come back to life. That's what they believed. But look at all this. 13 arrows, 30 olive leaves, and 13 olives. 13 stripes and bars on the shield. The words e pluribus unum, one out of many, 13 letters, 13 stars which form a hexagram. The hexagram, by the way, if you don't know, is a very occultic symbol. The occultists, Satanists use it. Right? You may have seen in some of their rituals on the floor, they would have lamps like stars put in the shape of a hexagram. The stars above the head of the eagle are in the form of a hexagram, and they are 13 in number. Now let's go to the reverse side of the Great Seal. What's there on the reverse side? The design on the reverse side was even more related to the mysterious orders, the secret societies. And that made the United States come within the scheme of the secret societies. And it was to fulfill, as they say, the Baconian dream of a new Atlantis. That means the reverse side portrays more clearly the original plan for America to make it into a new Atlantis, like Francis Bacon wrote about in his books. And they wanted to establish America as the capital of the New World Order. Well, that's their design, but of course it's going to change and it's going to go somewhere else. Well, America may be instrumental in bringing the New World Order, but the headquarters, I don't think, will be America. I think it'll go to some other place, probably a rebuilt Babylon. I don't know, but something like that. But the reverse side symbolism talks more clearly. If these 13s are not enough, you have on the reverse side more clear symbolism. What is there? You have the Great Pyramid of Giza, right? The Great Pyramid of Giza that we spoke about. The pyramid is the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's the one that's depicted there. It has 13 rows of masonry. I'll just put it here for you to see. This is how it looks, right? Somewhat. 13 layers. And of course, it's got all this, right? All the stones there. It's got 13 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then above it, you have this triangle. And inside this is the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye. And then there is this light thing around it, right? That's how it looks. So you have the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's composed of 13 rows of masonry. Again, the number 13. 13 rows or 13 layers, whatever you call it. And the stones that we have spoken about, right? These individual stones that are there in each of these layers. These stones, now I don't have the time to do all this, but these are 72 stones. You think, what is significant about 72? 72 is a very occultic number. And they believe that the fallen angels which rule this world are 72 in number. I think they call them cosmocrators, if I'm not mistaken. 72 fallen angels, angelic entities that rule this world. They believe they're 72. By the way, right, you have the Septuagint, which is LXX, which is 70, but in the story, if you look at it, it was not 70 scholars who were supposedly involved in the translation of the Septuagint, the Old Testament Hebrew into Greek, but 72 in number. That's what they believed. But later on, it came to the number 70. The Septuagint is connected to Alexandria, Egypt, to the devil, really. 72 stones are there in this unfinished pyramid of Giza that's depicted on the Great Seal of America, which is printed on your dollar bill. That's very interesting. The number 72 stands for the 72 fallen angels, which in Freemasonry and in all satanic cults, they believe this, that there are 72 entities that rule this world. The pyramid itself is without a capstone, right? If you look at the pyramid of Giza today, you know that there is no capstone on it. So also in this pyramid, there is no capstone. And above its upper platform, there floats a triangle, like I've just put here, containing the all-seeing eye surrounded by rays of light. This is how it looks. Does anything about this point you towards the God of the Bible or the Bible itself? No. Because we know that, yes, the Bible does teach that God lives on a mountain, right? It's called Zion, the heavenly Zion, as it's called in Hebrews and in the book of Psalms. You have the heavenly Zion. But that has been copied by the devil and then by secret societies. We Christians don't use these symbols for God or for heaven or anything. We don't. They use it. And it's printed on the dollar bill as the Great Seal of America, the Great Seal of the United States. Now the combination here, you have the eagle, which stands for the phoenix, and then you have the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. By the way, the all-seeing eye, everybody knows, is the eye of Horus. Who was Horus? He's an Egyptian god. He was the son of Osiris, and they believe that he died and he's going to come back to life, right? You have in the Bible women, in the book of Jeremiah, women weeping for Tammuz, right? That's Horus, because he died. And then he's going to come back to life. So they're going to rejoice and celebrate. Okay, so the all-seeing eye of Horus is, in satanic circles, it is the all-seeing eye of Satan himself. He's the one, right? Even in some of these Hollywood movies, you have this. Especially in these period movies that are connected to the occult. You have the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. That's the main power which controls hordes of monsters which are sent to kill people and stuff like that. And then you have all these Hollywood actors, and even here in India, the movie actors, right, always showing one eye. I don't know which eye that is, but whichever it is, they're showing one eye like this. Or they do all sorts of things. They do it like this or like this to show the pyramid and one eye and things like that. It comes from here. The all-seeing eye of Horus. And it's there on your dollar bill. You have always looked at the celebrities in Hollywood and said, these are satanic people. Look at how they always cover one eye, pointing to the eye of Horus, to Satan's eye. But you never thought for a moment that it's there on your dollar bill, right? And you never thought that's satanic. So the all-seeing eye the pyramid, the phoenix on the other side, all these things combine to present a very strong hidden meaning. Very, very strong. Like I've said, it's like a prophecy that's been printed on your dollar bill. It's there on it. There is only one possible origin for these symbols, as I've been saying, and that is the secret societies which came to America 150 years before the Revolutionary War that took place in America. I think in the 1800s probably. 150 years before the Revolutionary War, the secret societies infiltrated America. When I spoke about Washington, D.C. a little bit previously in some of my Bible studies, I told you how the Jesuits came and established themselves first in Washington, D.C. There they built their Jesuit college. Later on you have the Georgetown University, behind which is none other than Benjamin Franklin. Outwardly, they look like wonderful men, right? Benjamin Franklin probably supported George Whitefield's preaching and all that. But look at his writings. Forget his writings. Did you ever read what happened in his house, which I think is a museum now? When they dug underneath, what did they find? Go and do your research. You will find it. They were cannibalistic, some of them. Not all. I'm not saying this man was, but some of them were cannibalistic. They offered human sacrifices. And they did all sorts of experiments with people and killed them, just like they do, right, in your arm of the Jesuits. All sorts of experiments with human beings, mind control and things like that. It all started in those days with these men. They infiltrated America and they made a plan for America and they put it on paper in mysterious symbols. And those symbols come from the secret societies that they belonged to. I'll say this before I close. I will talk, the Lord willing, about the pyramid, the all-seeing eye, and the other things written on this side. I will talk about them in the next Bible study because we've run out of time, but I'd mentioned Franklin D. Roosevelt, the President of America, and his vice president was Henry Wallace. These two men were 32nd degree Freemasons, both of them. Henry Wallace, the vice president, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president, were 32nd degree, not the 33rd highest degree, the 32nd degree Freemasons. Even the 32nd degree Freemasons were initiated into the highest secrets of Freemasonry. These two men were that. And they were the ones to put the Great Seal of the United States on the dollar bill. Before that, it was not there. There is so much on this. Of course, on the outside, it all looks like very normal, very simple, the most logical thing to do. You take the Great Seal of the United States, you print it on the dollar. But what kind of men were these? If you look into that, you will be shocked. Both Franklin D. Roosevelt and Henry Wallace were firstly 32nd degree Freemasons. Secondly, as I had mentioned before, they followed Madame Blavatsky's theosophical secret doctrine. They were initiates into that. There was this Russian guy in America, I forget his name. He was a guru who taught Blavatsky's secret doctrine in America. And these people were his disciples, especially Henry Wallace was a very close associate of this guru from Russia who taught all manner of occult knowledge to people in America, especially to people in high levels in the government. They were the two men who were instrumental in printing the Great Seal on the dollar bill. Another thing about the eagle that I forgot to mention, because it's in connection with these two men, I didn't mention it earlier. These two men considered the 32 feathers on the right wing of the eagle and the 33 feathers on the left wing of the eagle. You know what these two men considered those? they considered these two to stand for the 32nd degree Freemasonry and 33rd degree Freemasonry. Think about that. They gave their own meaning to some of these things, right? The eagle that we spoke about, on the right wing, it had 32 feathers, on the left wing 33, and they believed that stood for the 32nd degree Freemasonry that they both belong to, and the 33rd degree Freemasonry, which is a little higher than theirs. But what's more interesting is Roosevelt was the 32nd president of the United States. So the right wing, they believed, is talking about Roosevelt. Henry Wallace was the 33rd vice president of America, and the left wing had 33 feathers. So they looked at these things in such, you can imagine what kind of minds they had. If they considered that the right wing's feathers stood for 32nd degree Freemasonry, the left wing stood for 33rd degree Freemasonry, one stood for Roosevelt, one stood for Wallace, and things like that. So he was the 33rd vice president. And another remarkable coincidence, right, if you'd call it, is that Roosevelt, the president of America, the 32nd president of America, was succeeded by Harry Truman. And he was the 33rd president of the United States. Obviously, if Roosevelt was the 32nd president, then Harry Truman was the 33rd president if he succeeded him. But the thing about Harry Truman is that he was a 33rd degree Freemason. Now you can see that these people are crazy about numbers. You know that? I have read, I would say, an immense amount of material on these secret societies. And I've seen their obsession with numbers, their obsession with symbols, their obsession with creating optical illusions, their obsession with making people believe one thing when they look at something, but behind it there is another secret meaning. Right? So, like we have seen with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the numbers 11, 22, 33, occultic numbers of Freemasonry. Vision, action, accomplishment. That's what those three numbers stand for. And every time they do stuff, they involve numbers because numbers are very significant. They believe numbers have power, right? Like in numerology, in pagan numerology, they believe numbers, like the stars, can play a very important role in your life in the course of this, the history of the world and things like that. That's why they use all these numbers. So these are some of the things about the eagle on the obverse side and the pyramid on the reverse side. But there are a lot of other things that I left out, which the Lord willing, I will talk about in the next Bible study. Especially about this reverse side of the dollar bill, of the Great Seal, of America. On the dollar bill, on the back side of it, on the right, on your left, when you're looking at the dollar bill, to your left side, you will see this. And on the right side, you will see the eagle. Roosevelt and Wallace wanted it to be like that. Especially Roosevelt, because he wanted, when people looked at it, the first thing they see would be the all-seeing eye of Horus and the unfinished pyramid. That's what they wanted. It's interesting, even though I'm not from that country. You know why? Because all these things are pointing towards how there's been a plan, not just from the founding of America, but right from Genesis 3:15, right? When God said, the seed of the woman will bruise the head of the seed of the serpent, or the seed of the serpent's head. Right from then, there's been a secret conspiracy, if you would like to call it that, that's been there for thousands of years to avoid that and to bring in the rule, the kingdom of Apollyon, ultimately on the earth. Apollyon, the son of Jupiter, the son of Saturn. That's what they want. And that's what they've been working through. And America is just one of those instruments that they've been using to accomplish their purpose. I hope that some of these things help you to understand what's happening in the world today, because there is only so much I can talk about. There is a lot more that you should look up yourself. Again, there's one thing I want to say before I close, and that is, do not go down this rabbit hole at the expense of the Bible. What I mean is, you leave Bible study aside and just get into all these so-called conspiracy theories and just go digging so deep that you forget that firstly and primarily we are called to be students of God's Word. Study the Bible every day, because you can never understand these things apart from an understanding of God's Word. This is the light. This is the lamp to our feet. And if you don't know this book and you are an expert at these other things, you are in great danger. I'm warning you about it. These things can be very interesting, right? If you look at the 350 plus videos that we have on this channel and on the church YouTube channel that we have, there are also a few hundreds of videos. You would hardly find, maybe not even 10, less than 10 videos on these subjects. All the other hundreds of Bible studies are studies of God's Word. Now, these things we are looking at because they are related to Bible prophecy. We understand some Bible prophecies better when we understand these things. So this should just be one of the subjects that you study. So don't get obsessed with it. Don't go digging so deep, because it will affect your faith. I've seen many times born-again Christians who got too deep into these things. They have said this to me. They said, now I really don't know if I believe what the Bible says. I've heard people say that. Can you believe it? When they got too involved in these things or things about these so-called aliens and UFOs, it affects their faith. So don't go too deep into these things. That's a warning. You can take it as a warning from someone who's seen some of these things, who have studied these things. It can be dangerous. So keep it limited. Keep it as limited as possible, enough just to understand what's going on and how it affects the last days, how it affects the coming of the man of sin, because that means the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ is even sooner. That's the whole reason why we look at these things. Never lose sight of this, that we try to understand these things so that we understand how close we are to the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ to take us home. Thank you very much for joining us. The Lord bless you. The Lord willing, we'll meet again in the next Bible study.